Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Did I Ask podcast. This week, our guest is Cody Oehm. Cody is the founder of Head1st. Head1st's mission is to unleash human potential. Now he's doing incredible things with Head1st and his Head to Heart program, which you are going to hear more about in this episode. I'm so excited for you guys to hear from Cody, and without further ado, let's get into this episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Did I Ask podcast. This week, I'm sitting down with Cody Oehm, founder of Head1st. Head1st's mission is to help people prioritize their mental health so that they can unleash their human potential. Hi Cody, welcome to the podcast.
Natalie, thanks so much for having me.
So, to start, Cody, I want to talk about how you started Head1st and what your experience has been with mental illness.
I'll start from the beginning. Basically growing up, played every sport. As I got older, hockey took a bit of a priority. Although I didn't play professionally, I did play AAA and, did the whole junior hockey thing as well. And, through that time, I had a few concussions. Never really thought anything of them. They never really kept me out of the lineup for more than 2 to 4 weeks. But around the age of 20 is when I started to notice the signs and symptoms of depression. So at first I couldn't really sleep. My mood was up and down, and I started to isolate myself. And within a few short weeks, I was in third year university. And, within a few short weeks, I found myself literally leaving school, quitting hockey, and basically drinking all the time. And it was a crazy dramatic change, and I had no idea why. And I got to the point where my parents stepped in, just because they knew something was completely off. And with their help, we started looking for answers. So naturally, the first stop was the family doctor. So I kind of walked in there and really had no idea what I was getting myself into, but kind of unpacked how I was feeling to the best of my ability. And, without a blink of an eye, he goes, okay, well, you have depression. I'm going to give you this pill. It's going to solve all your problems. And, that was the start of 3 years seeing 30 plus doctors trying to find an answer. Throughout that time, I saw naturopaths, multiple family doctors, therapists, psychiatrists. I even saw a hypnotist at one point. Was literally willing to try anything or see anyone that could potentially help. But about 2 years into that whole experience, I got some blood work done, and my results came back. And to my surprise, my testosterone level was actually 0. So the doctor that I had at the time was like, "Oh, don't worry about it, man. You're a healthy guy. It's just a mistake." But to me and my family, it kind of raised a red flag, and we're like, "Okay, let's get this tested again." So sure enough, doc gets it tested again, and the same result comes back. And it was legitimately 0. So in Canada, the range is between 10 and 27. Mine wasn't 1 or 2. It was legitimately 0. It was cut off completely. So, this time the doctor kind of acknowledges the problem and goes, all right, I'm going to refer you to an endocrinologist. And, I waited to get sick. I waited 6 months to get in to see the first guy. And the first thing he said was that he wasn't going to help. He actually accused me of taking steroids just because of my physical appearance. But, meanwhile, I never touched a drug. I just, worked out and played sports my whole life. 2 months later, same thing happened again with another endocrinologist. And then, at that point in time, I was in a pretty rough spot. I was out of school for 2 years. I had multiple bouts at the mental health hospital downtown Toronto. And I was just in a really awful place. But with the help of my parents, we ended up getting one more referral to a guy that Dr. Comer. So this time the experience was a lot different. I walked in there with honestly real no expectation. I didn't really know who this guy was. But as I walked into his office, it was a completely different experience. The first thing he asked me was if I played sports. And I was kind of like, why are you asking me this, man? We're not here to talk about this shit. But of course I answered yes. He asked me what I played. I said hockey. And then he asked me how many concussions I had. And this question completely threw me off, but I answered, 3 or 4. And, I definitely played through a few more. And he goes, okay, I think I know the answer. So between my blood work and a few other scans that we did, he basically determined that the concussions were the root cause of all the issues that I was experiencing and the hormone imbalance in the first place. So when you get a concussion, it causes inflammation in your brain. for me, that inflammation led to the dysfunction of my pituitary, which was the reason why my testosterone was cut off. And in turn, that was the reason why I was feeling like crap. So to make a long story really short, Comer put me on TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. I started injections literally that day. And within a month, it was a night and day difference. I could sleep, I was motivated, I was mentally clear, I was wanting to hang out with my friends, I was driven. Within 3 months, I was completely off all other antidepressant and anxiety medication. And, I had my life back. So I guess you asked me why I started Head First. Throughout that 3 years, I actually had 4 buddies that I played hockey with who took their own lives. And although I couldn't be certain that my buddies went through the exact same thing that I did, I thought that by sharing my experience, I could potentially help somebody else. So I wrote a long Facebook post, put that out to the world, and to my surprise, it got a lot of attention. So it had like 3,500 shares in the first week, and from that, I've had thousands of conversations with people all over the world about the topics of concussion, mental health, and just becoming more mentally fit. So that was probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, and I always known that I wanted to do something with it. But at the time, I was starting an e-commerce company. So you probably don't know this, but I actually built and sold a handbag brand, like women's purses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I spent 3 years doing that. And as a result, this whole Head First project kind of sat on the back burner. But about a year and a half ago, we sold the company. And, that's kind of when I wanted to start something. So I created the brand Head First. The original mission of it was to make the world aware of the impact concussions have on hormones and mental health. I quickly realized that A, hormones are super complicated. B, for me, I know nothing about them and they're not fun to talk about. And C, it just wasn't the direction that I really wanted to go. So I've kind of pivoted a few times over the course of the last year or so, and I've really landed in a direction that I'm happy with. So in terms of Head First, there's really 3 different pillars. The first piece is the awareness piece. So it's obviously like sharing my story and other people's stories as well. And kind of the narrative that I want to have with that, and the narrative that I do have with that is, always talk about how courageous it is to speak up with regards to mental health or concussions or whatever. But every time we're doing that, we're just reinforcing how hard it is in the first place. So the narrative I have here is like just making it like the cool and smart thing to do. Like, we have one brains, we might as well like take care of it. The second pillar is just providing a trusted list of resources. So as it can be really hard to find the right help. So over the my 3.5 years of just being connected with within that space after, I've got a consolidated list of clinical resources that if someone's coming to me asking for help, I can point them in the right direction. And then the third part is I actually created a mental fitness coaching program. So it's called Head to Heart. And essentially, I help people get out of their head and dive into their heart to develop mental clarity, take back control of their day, and build and break better habits. So that's something that I launched about 3 months ago, and it's kind of turned Head First into a business a little bit quicker than I expected. But that's kind of where I'm at. I know it's kind of a long-winded story, but yeah, that's where we are.
I think it's like it started out of something like so genuine, and maybe that's why it really took off quicker than you expected. So sort of taking the concussion route here, concussions have a big impact on mental health, and I know, like you said, it's something that has impacted your journey. I have post-concussion syndrome, which we talked about a little bit earlier, and it's sort of known as the invisible injury, and it can be really isolating. So what do you think the importance of monitoring mental health is when someone experiences a concussion?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things to talk about here. Number one is just knowing what a concussion is and understanding like the signs and symptoms of it. Like you said, a lot of people consider it an invisible injury, or you can see a broken leg, but you can't necessarily see what's going on inside someone's head. And at the same time, too, there's so many different symptoms, and concussions affect everybody differently. So I think the first part of that is just understanding all of the different things that concussions can affect, and just stopping and if you think that you've had one or suspect that you may be dealing with it, to take it seriously. There's a lot, like 90% of concussions happen without the person going unconscious. So there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with it that don't don't necessarily know that they had one in the first place. But with regards to concussions and mental health, I mean, there's a number of ways that they can affect that, both like directly, right? So in terms of the injury itself, you've obviously got that, short-term period after where you're sitting out, you've got headaches constantly and, all of that kind of stuff that can obviously play a role into your overall health and well-being. But secondly, like like I said, there's so many different things that a concussion can affect, right? And it's more than the classical symptoms that everyone knows about.
Yeah.
They can affect your vision, your hearing, your gut, your hormones, and long term, those can all have like a major consequence on your, like I said, like your overall health and well-being. So I think the biggest part here is just kind of understanding, how a concussion can like impact different areas of your life. And then number two, taking it seriously. And, I also think there's a huge stigma around it as well. No one wants to be that guy or girl that raises their hand. And especially when you start playing sports at a higher level and money gets involved and your spot can be jeopardized if you were to sit out. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done from that perspective, but there's so many different ways that a concussion can impact your mental health. And, a lot of the things I like to preach now is like physiology first, like how you treat your physical body has a massive impact on your mental on the
Yeah.
mental aspects.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all related. So on your website, you talked about how you became passionate about self-development.
Yeah.
What prompted this, and how has it had an overall impact on your mental health?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, when I was going through my stuff, like that 3.5 years, like I said, I was willing to try anything and talk to anyone to get better. So that kind of led me down a rabbit hole of self-development, reading podcasts, events, courses, anything. And, it was great. I learned a lot throughout that process, but I noticed a few common themes within that. Number one is that kind of all the self-development tools kind of talk about the same shit. Number one is like finding like a purpose and a meaning in life. A lot of the time it comes from, just like the dark times
Mm-hmm.
and also like just cultivating like real intrinsic motivation as to like why you're actually doing something. So that's kind of like the first piece. The second piece is like just taking care of your body and your mind. So, it's really simple. We all think we have to have this like complicated checklist of things to make sure that we're able to perform both mentally and physically. But in reality, it's just really simple. Make sure that you're sleeping, make sure that you're eating properly, make sure that you're moving your body, and, just do the right things from that perspective. And then number three is take action. So, all those books and those self-development tools are amazing, but, nothing works unless you do. So you can, like to say, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And, with the whole Head to Heart program and kind of everything that I'm up to now, I want to take the bullshit out of self-development and just make it really simple for people, because that's what it is in reality. And I think a lot of the times people overcomplicate things instead of just taking action. But yeah, in terms of self-development, I'm always up for becoming a better version of me. And I think, I think everyone does. I think it'd be kind of weird if they didn't. So, yeah, self-development's been a huge part of my life, and it's something that I continue to pursue on a regular basis.
Do you think that people are maybe like scared of self-development in a way? Because I get the sense that sometimes people aren't as interested in it as you think, someone might be.
Yeah, I think number one is people can become complacent and comfortable in what they're already doing. And I think the first step to breaking out of that cycle is just becoming self-aware. So it's becoming self-aware of what you're currently up to and what you actually want, and then working towards that. Self-awareness is kind of the first step to self-development. Like, you can't change what you aren't aware of. And just the reality is people just get so comfortable day in and day out of doing the same stuff that they don't realize there's an opportunity to break that habit and, actually create a life on their own terms, or pursue something that they actually want to pursue, instead of just kind of doing the same shit that they've been brought up to do in the first place. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned that you created a mental fitness program. Can you explain a little bit more about what it is and how it helps people?
Yeah, for sure. So the program itself, it's called Head to Heart. The reason it's called Head to Heart is because I'm a firm believer that the person who we want to become already exists inside of us. It's just a matter of getting out of here and diving into our heart to really figure that out. I'm a firm believer that we already know what we want to do. It's just we're conditioned to think and act a certain way, and that's what's preventing us from taking action on the things that we really want to go after. So in terms of the program itself, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If you really boil it down, I'm just helping people realize how awesome they already are and get them to take action on the things they already that they know they want to do. In terms of the process, like I said, kind of the first step to self-development is that self-awareness piece. So we do that first. From there, what we do is we get into the inner work. So we define who you are at your core beyond what you do. A lot of the time we assign our self-worth to the titles and labels that we carry, but the reality is those things can, they can all be taken away from us, and a lot of them are outside of our control. So we define who we are here so that no matter what's going on outside of us, we can be good. From there, what we do is we paint the picture of what you want your life to look like, and we reverse engineer or extract basically core values that you can live by today to, not only check in with your intentions and make better decisions, but to allow you to kind of trust and enjoy your process. A lot of the time, again, we assign our self-worth to outcomes, and those outcomes are outside of our control. So it's how can we let go of that outcome, focus on just showing up, and then give ourselves the recognition and acknowledgement that we're seeking in the first place. So our mental health and our well-being isn't up and down like a yo-yo. Instead of a thermometer, we're more of a thermostat, so we can kind of control that temperature of the room. And then from there, we just really figure out what the mental blocks are from accomplishing that vision. We get to the root cause of them, basically call them out as bullshit, and then flip them ahead and paint the picture of what the empowering version looks like. The reason we do the inner work first is because it makes it very easy to determine, what actions you want to take in order to make actual progress. And in terms of that assessment, first we look outwards. So we look at the people, places, and things around you, what lifts you up and what holds you back. And from there, we make decisions on what you want to remove, what you want to act on or plan for, do more of and do less of. And we get into conversations around cutting cords and creating boundaries. The more boundaries that you create, the more space that you're creating for yourself and the things that you want to do. And then from there, what we do is we turn that spotlight inwards, and we look at the things that you're doing on a regular basis. So we're going to look at your morning and nighttime routine. And we're also just going to look at things that light you up and, kind of dim your light as well, and that kind of you don't look forward to. The things that make you feel healthy versus unhealthy, and the things that make you feel productive versus unproductive. And it's all based on feeling. It's not based on what you think, because again, think is conditional and it's operating from up here.
Right.
There, what we do is we thread the needle between all of those lessons and figure out which core actions or habits are going to move the needle the most for you. And then I give strategies to people on how to build and break them. So, and the majority of the lessons are based on my personal experience, going through adversity and, doing all the self-development stuff and building companies and sport and all of that. But aside from that, I'm actually going through a mental performance coaching certification right now to work with athletes. So that's something kind of going on in the back burner right now, and the goal with that is to work with teams and athletes one-on-one. And it's been an interesting ride. Ever since I launched that program, there's been a bunch of opportunities open up, which has been really cool. So yeah, it's kind of where the focus is on now. But yeah.
That's awesome. I'll leave you with the last word here, but where can people find you to learn more about what you do and your programs and all that?
Yeah, for sure. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of finding me. Just go on Instagram and search my name, or you could search Head1st, and then the website's in the bio there, or it's head1st.co. Head1st is spelled one ST at the end instead of the actual word. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward in terms of how to find me. Yeah, Natalie, I really appreciate this. This has been awesome.
Thanks for coming on. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode or watching if you are on YouTube. A lot of my episodes now are actually going to be posted to YouTube as well as to all major podcast platforms. So however you like to take in your podcast or media, you now have the ability to do so via video or audio for my podcast, which I'm super excited about. And yeah, I'm so excited for the rest of the month and the rest of our episodes. And again, just huge thank you to Cody for coming on. And I will see you guys in my next episode.